Hello friends, this is Cara-Renee with B.Reborn Art and Healing. Welcome to episode 12 of Water Media Wednesday. Today I'm going to be watercolor painting this beautiful rose floral using my, or doing a 6x6 page. I'm actually not using the watercolor paper that is in this because it's not the best quality. So I am using my Arches watercolor. So I just cut a piece down to 6x6 and I'll go ahead and insert that into my journal when I'm done. I'm going to be using my Tim Holtz stamp platform to make sure that I can get a really good impression with this rose image. Working with watercolor paper, often it takes 2 to 3 stampings to get it to really be a clean and clear impression. So what I was doing there is I had to apply a glue stick to the back of that stamp because it's actually a weird stamp that's on plastic. It's kind of odd. So I just put a little bit of glue on it and then just wipe it off when I'm done. That actually gave me a really good impression. I think I only stamped it twice. So often I do like to tape my project down when I'm watercoloring to a piece of hardboard. This is just an old watercolor block, an Arches watercolor block that I used all of the paper in. So I'm just using that to tape my design down. Today I'm using my Rembrandt paints, and primarily they're my go-to because it's a small palette and it fits really nice in video, and they're really good quality paints. So, and then the brush that I was just showing you is I am going to be using my Anna Mason series. She has a collection of 5 different brushes, most of them very, very small, but they're a really good quality brush. But I knew that I needed a little bit finer brush to get the details on this rose. I hope that you enjoy the process. I have not yet figured out my own style with watercolor, so I do a lot of watercoloring with stamped images as well as just sketches that I get off of Pinterest or whatever. I just use them to experiment. So there I was using my Quin Rose as my pink, and then my lemon yellow. I thought I would drop in some yellow into the rose, and then going to go ahead and move on to the buds. They are generally darker in tone because they're more condensed, and so I'm just going to go ahead and put all of my color in right at once versus on the actual rose I do come in with the glaze and add my shadows and all of that stuff here, petal by petal. And I was just testing with the back of my hand to see if the paper was dry. And the way that you can tell is if you touch the back of your hand to the paper, and if it's still cool to the touch, it's still wet. Or not completely dry. So there I'm mixing up my sap green in that farthest well. And I've mentioned this before. I don't, Rembrandt sap green is not my favorite. So I do just get my little half pan of sap green and put it in my palette here. And then I'm using the lemon yellow as my yellow in the leaves. And it's really important to incorporate the same colors into your design. So because I use the lemon yellow in the rose and will be continuing to do so, it was a good choice for the leaves as well, just so that there's consistency in the image and things don't look discordant. And so there, I just sped through some of those leaves because the process is the same for each one. Often I will go in to an image or a leaf and I'll add a darker shadow using like ultramarine or something. But this is just a fast Water Media Wednesday project, so I didn't go through that kind of detail. I'm just dropping in the yellow and then the sap green. And then I'm just going to finish up those leaves and then we will move on to the rose. And there's just a close-up. I just I love leaves. Often I'll start with them in a watercolor project, and then I do the flower last. And then if I mess up on the flower, all that work I did with the leaves is it's not wasted, but it's like, oh man. But I really love doing the leaves. I look forward to creating my own style so that I can really kind of set myself free in the world of watercolor. I'm not there yet. It's not my main focus in my life. But I do enjoy watercolor when I just need to de-stress, or I just don't want the mess of mixed media, because sometimes it's really exhausting to create a mess on my table, and it's just acrylic paint everywhere and stencils everywhere. And so sometimes I'm just in the mood for something a little bit more mellow and soothing. So there I start with wetting the edge there where the petals overlap. And then I drop in my more concentrated color of that pink. Again, that's the Quin Rose. And then because I started with that yellow, I wanted this to have kind of that yellow undertone. And there I just quickly went back to my buds and added the yellow there. Forgot that I had not done that. So the process for each of the petals is the same. I drop in the color again along the edge, the underneath edge of that petal on top. And then I'll add a little bit of that lemon, and then I'll blend it out with a little bit of water. Because I'm working in a really small space, I do make sure that I'm dabbing off my watercolor brush of excess water, because I don't really need that much water to move that paint around. And so again, every petal is the same process. Just wanting to keep in mind where the shadows would be. I have definitely come a long way in this process, because when I first started doing watercolor, I could not get the depth or dimension to save my life. It was just really, really hard. But I definitely am getting better and really enjoy playing with watercolor. Often when I can't sleep, or again, I just need to disconnect from life, I'll just do watercolor, because it's fairly mindless, and very soothing. I will slow down a little bit when I get more towards the center of the flower, just so that you can see how I address those really tightly packed petals in the middle. They're a little bit different. You do have to work with them a little bit differently than you do on the outer edges, because the center is always going to be darker, or most often it's going to be darker than the other segments of the flower. And so there I was able to do a little bit more, go a little bit broader with my paint, because the area is still very small. And then so I drop in my concentrated color on the underneath side there on the edge, and then bring it out with a little bit of water on my brush. And then here I'm getting to the center area, and just I didn't do wet into wet here. I just applied the pigment to my brush, and then applied it directly to paper, and then went in and blended it out with just a little bit of water, and then making sure that I go in and add that yellow as well. I really like how it turned out. I did go back and do black outline along all of the lines, because my stamped image, it didn't stamp great, and I didn't like the broken black lines that I was seeing. And you'll be able to see that in another close-up here in a minute. But if you're wanting to play with watercolor and you feel a little intimidated, I would encourage you to get a couple of really nice floral stamps, rubber stamps, and then do this like I'm doing, because it's basically risk-free. You can practice again and again and again just by stamping that image out. I've done this image so many times in various colors, and it's just a great way to practice. and to see if you even really like the process of watercolor. I love it. It was my first love, and I just really, really enjoy the results. So there's just a close-up of that. And I will be going in with right now with a wash of that quinacridone rose. I'm going very watered down, kind of doing a real watered down wash and going over all of the petals again, just to kind of, again, make sure that I get rid of any white spaces. I didn't want any white specks in this design. Sometimes I like them, but I'm going to go ahead and do a wash all along it just to kind of even things out a little bit. It looked a little bit, some things looked a little lighter, a little darker than others. Doing the same thing with the leaves. Not wanting to get rid of the light too much, but again, wanting to just get rid of the white speckles that I just didn't want in this case. And then I will be coming in with and doing some stenciling. I decided, hey, I've got this great stencil from Shawn Petit that has these beautiful script words on it. So I went ahead and used that. I was creating this around the time of my daughter's birthday. And as I don't know if you've seen other videos where I've talked about this or not, but my love for pink roses comes from my experience with her. And so it's always really a sentimental thing when I paint a pink rose. It's always really meaningful. But I thought I'm going to go ahead and stencil in the word love. Again, this is from ShawnPetit.com, one of her stencils. And I really liked how it turned out. I kind of, in retrospect, wish I had just stopped with the love and left it really simple. But I did come in with some other elements that I wasn't super thrilled with. But again, it's just my journal. It's not a big deal. It's not do or die. It's, it's something that, you can kind of play around with and experiment. But it is fun to incorporate some other things with watercolor. So, a little bit of mixed media here because I'm using an archival ink to stencil that word love on, and then also stamping. So I did this little like swirly stamp thing, which was fine, but it had an entirely different look in that the lines were really thin, whereas the love word had thicker lines. But again, it's okay. So I just go and put a little bit on each of those corners, not in the top left-hand corner because it already had the love up there, which I felt was enough. But it was something different, not something I'd probably do again. But for this project, it was just fine. And then I'm just going to do that lower right-hand corner, and then I'll be done with that. And then, as I mentioned before, I will be coming through and with my permanent marker, a waterproof marker, I'll be doing all of the black lines in the stamped image, both on the flower and on all of the leaves, because I wanted that to be really crisp. And I don't know if you can see it. The lines are just somewhat broken just from the stamped image. So it looks super cool when I went through and did this, as well as using that marker to go ahead and connect the lines for the stencil word. And then just really quickly, I'm going to go through and just outline all of those leaves. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you'll give watercolor a try if you have the inkling to play with that. I hope that you'll check out the other episodes. This is, again, episode 12, so there's been 11 before this. Super fun. I do a little bit different kind of project, just always using a water media of some sort. And then here what I did is I just newly discovered I could use my stamp as a mask if I want to do splatters. So that's what I'm doing there. So anyway, thank you so much for coming by and visiting my channel. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.